welcome, family, to another special message from the Ancient Ones. My name is Dr. Mumbi Saraki. How you doing? How's everything going? I really do pray that you are well in all your ways and that you've used this season, this August season, this Lionsgate season, to start to create your own narrative, because that is the most important thing about the Lionsgate. And please check out the video I did on the Lionsgate portal. The energy will still be super intense until the 12th of August. But even after that, these are energies now that are hitting our planet, like new information, new codes are hitting our planet daily. So this should almost, what you did during the Lionsgate portal of, setting down your affirmations, literally scripting your new life, should become a way of life for you, your children, your family. You should even teach your children how to write. Remember the way we used to write those creative stories? But anyway, those are stories for other days. Special shout out to our Patreon family. Thank you so much for supporting us on that platform. We appreciate, love you so much. Black owned, Black published. Please definitely consider supporting us for as little as $2 a month. And thanks to everyone that has sent us a love donation. We will be getting a gift to you in the mail. Family, the vibes have been too heavy. We've been crafting our own, our new life, the next chapter. And there's so much faith because the last Lionsgate is why I ended up here, literally in just the most beautiful place on earth, a place I've always wanted to live. But those are stories for other days. The message today from the Ancient Ones is they wanted us to explain how Africa got to where it was, how we were able to fall this far. Because the narratives and the stories, no matter how much, whether you look at Enki and Enkil and all those characters, or whether you're following the creation story from the scriptures, or whether you're following your traditional stories, our traditional story is very much like an Adam and Eve, although it's about Gikoyo and Mumbi, and then Mumbi has 10 daughters. So she's like the first mother. She's the first queen mother, mother of nations, and then she gives birth to the perfect 9, which is 10 daughters. Basically, 10 doesn't exist in our community. I'll have to share these stories in our nation, I should say. And they end up becoming the queen mothers of nations. So that's a creation story that I've fallen back to. But it's way deeper than that, family. And we really need to just understand the concepts of what's happening so that we can know where to direct our energy. You see, at any given moment, the reason that, your future is not set in stone is because at any given moment, there are different timelines that are opening up to you based on your choices, based on your thinking, based on your environment, and based on your will and your power. Because there's the timeline of like what we really want to happen, what we really desire to happen. Then there's the timeline of like what we fear will happen and kind of all that fear-based kind of programming, the Babylon timeline that they want us on. And then there's all these timelines in between because it's all our thoughts are creating this reality. So literally, it's living narratives. And so you can pick at any one time which living narrative to go on to. And that's why sometimes you'll see that like, sometimes you'll have an what do they call it? Ecstatic moment. And you'll jump onto your highest timeline. All these things will be opening up to you. Amazing things will be happening. And then you'll wonder why, you'll think it's someone who came into your life or some juju or whatever story. And that will pull you. All of a sudden, you lose luck. You start losing opportunities. You start, everything goes. It's like your luck changes. What happened? It's like you moved from that narrative or that timeline to a lower timeline. And so we existed on a much higher timeline, which required a higher consciousness to operate in. Because right now we're at the lowest of the lowest levels of consciousness, family, literally. That's why you hear on this timeline, they talk about how some people came from tadpoles, some people came from monkeys, some people were mixed with animals, and that's how they came around, where we are sun people. We're made 100% of the cosmos. So what happened was there was a major, you can call it a big bang, you can call it an invasion, alien invasion, you can call it whatever you want. But there was a massive fall in consciousness where we literally went from being in heaven and living in a world where we had our own, all the technology you're seeing now, we were beyond that. We could telepathically communicate to one another across continents. We had castles and all these amazing buildings. Highest level societies, family. I'm trying to think of what we had, like things like, flying cars and all those things you see in the futuristic, but that's based on them. So they use too much metal and. But we were living in very high level societies. That's why we were able to build the pyramids and stuff. So we went from a consciousness that could build pyramids to a consciousness that could barely take care, to an infantile consciousness. And what happened is that a lot of our nations jumped timelines. They were able to come together and become one mind as a nation, as communities, and they were able to shift themselves off this timeline before this timeline went to hell. Everything is a narrative, including Mama Earth. She's part of our narrative family. But all narratives are connected. So those who jump timelines are still connected and they're still curious about what is happening with this current project. Because many people didn't want to go through hell. So they got their nations. That's what happened with, the perfect example is the Mayans. What happened is the Mayans came into one mind and they left. That's also what happened with the Egyptians. Many were able to just shift and leave and move on to another timeline, another Earth. Because all of this is narratives. We're all creating this with our consciousness. So the physical it's like we're walking in a dream, if you want to think about it like that. So why it happened or how it happened is not is not as important right now, because I think they have us stuck in a time loop. And I'll do a separate show on what the ancient ones have been telling me about the time loops and how even scripture and stuff has put us in this time loop. But those are stories for other days. So we fell into hell, family. And we've been in hell for 2,000 years. Now, this did not happen without the consent, let's say, of those that rule this universe. They saw what was happening to the planet, this plane, and we're not the only ones on this plane. Please check out my show on 33 continents. It's not 7 continents. And so they quarantined, and I mean, there's many stories about how they came in. They made allegiances with these. Some call them reptilian races, some call them the dragon races. There's many, but it's an off-planet race that kind of invaded this planet. I mean, there's so many different stories, and I really don't want us to get stuck to the narrative, because the narrative is part of the manipulation. And so it's more important for us to recognize what happened, and then to recognize that for us to be restored is to raise our consciousness. That's basically the message from the ancient ones. And so when we fell into hell, family, there was certain things, certain nations, they were able to go with their physical nations and go. The structures, just because they didn't have the energetic vibration, the high level energetic vibration of the beings that had built it, the Lemurians that we don't see, all those underwater nations and kingdoms, they just weren't able to be sustained, and so they fell. Many nations across Africa, family, jumped to different timelines. The highest level ones, they jumped to different timelines, and we are now back. We are those that jump to different timelines. And we watched this fall to consciousness. And for the nations who could not get themselves together, who could not find unity, who could not take advantage of the group consciousness to get themselves out. For them, it's many of their mystic men that left, many of their high-level seers that chose to ascend on their own, like the Buddhas, and became incredible stories, the Christs, incredible stories. And they were still ascending as this went down, and they kept those gateways open through their ascension. And ascension is just going from this closed mind. I think they say we're using like something like less than 5% of our brain. Everything shut down, family. So ascension is to open that back up. That's how you become a Messiah, a Christ, is you go into like back into that highest level consciousness. And so when we fell in consciousness, we lost a lot of information. And because a lot of nations that were not able to get themselves, they were already divided. They couldn't get them, they couldn't come together. They couldn't find that unity. They were now forced to be part of that experience. And almost their judgment has been coming to hell with this, with this lower vibrational race and being at the mercy of this lower vibrational race, of this lower vibrational rulers. Because we would never have been ruled by the worst among us. We were always ruled by the highest among us. This is the first time we're being ruled by the lowest among us, and you can see how reality has turned out. And so, whoa, the rain is coming, family. I share all this to say that some of our nations chose to stay. Some of our nations chose to, because they were protecting certain instruments of power that, who knows why they couldn't take them out of here. But they were protecting certain instruments of power. So those nations stayed. And those nations dwell amongst us, but not with us. And it's just like, I always thought this was some kind of like fantasy, but it's not. Like Wakanda is real, family. But they've tried to, it's like, Mzungu went and got this information from Mount Zion, which is Mount Kenya. Because where now I was living by the mountains, I've now moved to another part of the nation as I was called to. I'm still by the mountains. I'm still building my shrine by the mountains. But when I was living there, there was so many whispers of a secret people that lived in the mountains, and the men would appear and disappear, and they'd look just like us, they'd dress just like us, and sometimes they'd come to the cities and they go back. And there's one or two who knew exactly where their gate was into the mountains, and they shared. These are not the inner earth people. These are people who are living on surface earth. And they shared, and most of the people who had shared lost their lives. So that's a whole other story. So these nations, some of these nations are still existing today in what we can call secret, or they're existing beyond Antarctica. But they want nothing to do with this order. They want nothing to do with this narrative. And they've just been waiting for when we start spiraling back up in consciousness and start awakening. And so right now, family, the way we get out of hell is we raise our thinking. We expand our minds. It's as simple as that. And right now, we don't even have a choice. It's no longer a debate. And that's why I don't like to get into this is the story of how it began. That is the story. We'll figure it out when we get back there. And we'll laugh and laugh and laugh because there really is no narrative. There's multiple narratives. But we, especially as the chosen ones, what happened is we are the ones whose nations jumped onto other timelines, and we we continued our lives. But we were asked by Mama Earth to return now to this timeline because the timeline is now getting ready to go back up. So it's like Mama Earth is getting ready to go back out of hell and rise into heaven. And so we, as certain masters, because we're not just civilians, let's say, where we live. The ones who have come here are kings and queens, and our kings and queens were the highest level musicians, highest level magicians, highest level seers. I mean, they were the most gifted. That's royalty. That's what royalty was. It's like you're on a vibration that is higher than those you rule over. So that's why we're here, is to, even us, we want to take part of this journey. It's the greatest ride ever. To come into hell knowing that we're rising to heaven, and to kind of go through this all those emotions. So we were born into hell. This is hell. This isn't life. This is hell. The way they describe hell, this is hell. There's no heaven here. Maybe for those nations that are existing that we don't know about. And so all you need to do, all we need to do as a collective African people is rise back up to heaven in our consciousness. Not try and figure out so much the stories, but expand your mind. So don't stick to one story, but listen to all stories, listen to all different ideas of how civilizations were, and expand this as much as possible until it's happening on an intuitive level. Because you see, when you're connected to the Most High, which is the mind of the Most High, all the knowledge is there, all the libraries are there. And it's like it's the highest level AI. That's what they're trying to mimic, where you can get all this knowledge. So you just need to open yourself up enough where you reach a certain heavenly position in your mind, where you're not in torture and pain and anguish and jealousy and envy, but you're on a higher level. And from that higher level, you can now connect to the mind of God and change your life. And this is the opportunity where we, as an African people, we are the ones, the nations that remained behind were the ones who could not get it together and come together. This is the opportunity now for us as an African nation from all these bloodlines to bring ourselves together so that we can become one mind and pull this reality into a new timeline, or at least, create a new timeline from this reality and exit. That's what the spiritual rescue is. That's why we're here. We're here because we're higher as chosen ones. We're as higher vibrational beings who just by our presence, we're pulling this world out of hell and into heaven. But will we as an African nation, because these are the nations that didn't make it. These are the ones that couldn't get it together, that couldn't come together. Will you make it this time? Will you make it this time? Time is of the essence. Because that leap up is happening now, but as always, there will be this, it's like the worlds are splitting. And so this narrative will continue on until it dies its natural death. But that new earth, as we call it, or the new narrative is here. Will we make it? Because it requires a certain level of unity consciousness, the power of unity consciousness. Anyway, it's raining. We give thanks and praise for the rain. We give thanks and praise for the rain. I'm recording this on the 8/8 portal, family. May this be the resurrection that our people need. May this be the restoration. May this be the season that the nations who could not come together in the past come together and realize it's more important to be united than to be divided. Tuko pamoja. Looking for a conscious community, or for people, who are on their awakening journey, on their transition to an off-grid living in your country, well, we have the solution, family. We're calling it Unity Communities. We get so many emails every week from people who ask if I know of people in their region or people in their city or people in their town who are on a similar kind of journey, who have broken away or are breaking away from the religious psychosis, and they're looking for just people who think the same way in their town, in their city. But more importantly, to give us a community where we feel understood, understood, overstood, where we can bond with people of like mind. And if you feel called to be part of this, definitely email me at drmumbi at drmumbishow.com. Please put your country in the subject line with Unity Communities. Get in touch with me, drmumbi at drmumbishow.com. Unity Communities.